Hey everyone, welcome to the EsportsNext podcast. I am thrilled to be joining as the host for season 3 along with my co-hosts. We are going to be interviewing speakers, sponsors, and attendees of the Esports Trade Association conference in Chicago. So if you're looking to understand who will be at the conference and what they're all about, tune in, come join us.
This podcast is sponsored by PeopleWork.
PeopleWork puts the power of automation, advanced technology, skills data, and behavioral sciences at the fingertips of all users to build a future-ready workforce. Download the PeopleWork app today. All right, welcome to another episode of the EsportsNext podcast. It is my pleasure to be joined by our lovely ESCA founder, Megan Van Petten. And today our guest is Kim Kelley, who is the CEO and co-founder of PeopleWork. Kim, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about esports. I very rarely get to.
Absolutely. Well, let me start off by sharing a little story of how we got involved, because it was very serendipitous. And I feel like it's a story of just good people being around and seeking to help each other. So I had the opportunity to speak at an event at SMU. And I noticed, when you're speaking at an event, you're on the stage, you're looking for the people who are actually paying attention, right?
Yes.
Who
Eye
are making eye contact. That's right. So I'm like, okay, I'm not speaking to 100, I'm speaking to 3. Boom, boom, boom. There was this young man who was making eye contact throughout the things that I was ranting about on stage. And then later, I had to run to my car before lunch. So I come back to lunch a little late, and I'm like, man, who am I going to have lunch with? How can I make this a purposeful time building relationships with somebody? I turn around, and here's this strapping young lad, former Navy.
Chase is in your face.
Navy man, Chase is in my face. And I said, hey, I think you were in my session. Do you want to go grab lunch? Not knowing a thing of what he did. And so we're sharing stories. And I said, Chase, okay, what do you do? And he said, I work for this staffing company. This company, it's incredible, PeopleWork, that helps people find the right positions. And I said, perfect partnership opportunity here. I work in the esports industry, and there is a dynamic today where all these people are getting laid off.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these mergers, there's all these acquisitions. It's very common that, big fish swallows little fish, and then the people that were with the smaller company are dismissed, or people are just going out of business. And it's a greater dynamic just in our economy that people need jobs. And I said, it would be such a value add to our community if we had a tremendous group like yours that can bring people back into employment, whether that's in esports or another industry. Just how can we get people paying their bills, building their experience, and in roles where they thrive? So with that, a couple phone calls happened. We were introduced to yourself by Chase, and you are the most recent sponsor of the EsportsNext conference.
Ooh, we're so excited. This is going to be great for Chase and Emily. They're both going to be in person, and it'll be great prep for us to get more familiar with the skills environment that's going on in esports, because, to your point, there's so much opportunity for longevity and employability from the work that people do in esports that can just kind of branch everywhere. So we're there to accelerate and get informed more about esports from a skill and a community perspective, but then also kind of secretly figure out, how do you keep all of these skills compounded and people continuing to enhance their proficiency. So it's going to be exciting.
Love it. I would love to dig into that a little later in this episode. First, why don't you tell our audience with your own words, what is PeopleWork and what is the value that you add?
I appreciate the question, but I'll start with a point of clarity. One is that we're not a staffing agency. We are a technology company. So staffing agencies, their prime function and the way that they make business is off of time. They don't necessarily have a lot of preliminary experience or concentration on the candidate experience, because they really just want you to get to work, right? And they don't get paid until you get to work. People work is on the opposite side of that from our technology experience. We want you to have a great candidate experience because we know that it will lead to long-term personal success for you as an individual. It doesn't mean staffing agencies or technology are good or bad. It's just a distinction between how we work and how staffing agencies work. So as a technology company, we are a marketplace that is really centered around the individual. And it's fascinating since we started 5 years ago to learn that there really isn't a name for this individual. You're either a candidate, an employee, a talent, a job seeker, but you can't really be a human. And that in itself is kind of interesting as an indicator of the way that the whole application process works. You're not even a human being in the application process.
That's the truth.
So,
Yeah.
So what we decided to do after 25 years as a HR executive, either a chief HR officer or leading executive strategies for some of the Fortune 10 companies of the world, I implemented enough things to know what wasn't working. And to know that just our vocabulary in itself was evidence of what a really broken system People Work was designed. So we're a technology company really centered around the individual's success, long-term success around achieving their work-life goals. And that means, are you reaching your income goals? Are you getting the work that you want to? Are you connecting with people that will help you through that journey? And are you learning what you need to in real time to keep you ready for the future of work?
Wow. Well said. I love following people's entrepreneurial journeys. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur until COVID hit. And I love that perspective and skill set from people who they do a job and they figure out how this could be done better. And then they have the courage to step out on their own and create something that's better for the world. Can you share a little bit about that process of identifying the pain points and then, leaving that regular paycheck and co-founding this incredible company?
Oh my gosh, John, you might need some alcohol. Our listeners might need some alcohol, because this is, I don't call it courage. I call it insanity. And entrepreneurship is like, yeah, some people think, you've got this entrepreneur mindset. I think it's like a disease. And I don't mean to talk about it so negatively, but it is a beatdown. People who try to think that it's like this sexy Elon Musk experience, it's not. It's only an Elon Musk experience if you're Elon Musk, right? And entrepreneurship.
His experience is a beatdown too, but yeah.
Yes. So I want to start off the conversation with anybody who might be listening about demystifying or de-romanticizing entrepreneurship as a whole. When I decided to take the journey, it was my second time starting a company from scratch. The first time, it was completely unrelated. It was related to my education, but not related to my years of professional experience. Went well. I ended up, 0 to 4 million, great story, but in itself, it was still a process. We were essentially at that time a product before its time. And when I looked at all of the problems that I was facing on an HR front for me meant, the number one thing that an HR person is asked from their CEO is, where are my people? Get my people. What's the problem with my people, right? Megan's laughing because she knows the journey. She knows the conversation. Finally, I just looked at the last CEO that I worked with and I said, I can't create people that don't exist. Wow. So if you can't create people that don't exist, and if you're not really equipped socially to actually create a system that encourages employability and encourages an opt-in recruiting experience or sourcing experience, we're all just chasing our tails. And
Yeah.
I just decided I would rather go on an island and learn how to fish and survive on my own than implement one more HR management platform or one more recruiting system, or have to do the same thing that got me no different results. So that's how it came about. It really came about like, ugh. And then the nail on the coffin of executiveship that opened the door to entrepreneurship was when my daughter came home from college, and she's on the couch and she's distressed. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, I don't have a job. An HR executive, to hear that from their child is like a slap in the face.
A plumber's faucet's always leaking. Am I right?
So I said, what's going on? And she shows me. She shows me what their career services department showed her. Indeed, LinkedIn, fill out a profile. And the disconnect between reality and execution was like this.
Yeah.
So I felt bad. I set up the standards of resume-based systems. I set up the standards of candidate applicant tracking systems. I set the false narrative that college was still the route to entry to career as our job market changed to a skills-based economy. So many things, it was like guilty conscience. So John, that's how I became an entrepreneur. That's how I swallowed the decision to do it and leap into solving this magnanimous problem that we have as a society. It's not a business problem. It's not a citizenship problem. It's a societal problem.
Interesting. A lot of people are going through, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, this this dynamic of people are losing their jobs. Jobs are either disappearing due to companies going out of business or mergers or other reasons, or some challenges with the economy. The economy, of course, is rather cyclical, so we kind of go through these things again and again. With what we're going through now, would you say, and I'm just talking from your expertise standpoint, is this something like, hey, we've definitely seen this before, and so we apply best practices, or is it like, what? No, there's some new things here, and so a innovative technology like People Work is doing new and different things to help get people back to work?
Gosh, Sean, I love the way you phrased that question. I think the cyclical part to it is what it is, but the outcomes are what's different. And so the outcomes I'll address first, and then I'll talk about how People Work is designed to really address this potential, what do you call, freight train? You see a freight train coming, you're just like, I need to make sure it's on the right tracks. What has happened in this cycle that is new is a consolidation for a lack of job allocation. And in the HR world, that just means if I'm going to let go of John as a programmer, John has a probability of getting an equal job as a programmer within a certain amount of time. Because the job market, the labeling of that role, the availability of that role is still viable. John can have a good at-bat to get that. But what has happened now in this consolidation of organizations is also a transition between automated skills and human skills. And people are not really aware of how impactful that is until you look at the kind of jobs that Salesforce and Microsoft and Facebook or Meta and Tesla let go during I call it the 2020 COVID cover that lasted until 2021. What happened is that you saw a consolidation of roles that the skills were automated. So instead of an accounting team of 100 heads, I need an accounting team of 50 because I have already created an automated workflow to
Right.
reduce the other 50 heads.
Yeah.
If I am a programmer and I'm looking at QA, instead of manual QA, automated QA has now replaced 30 heads in that company, right?
Right.
So great, these big juggernauts, these big technology companies say, COVID's really impacted us, revenue is down. Well, no, that might have, of course, been the case, but it was really an opportunity to say, now is the time to create margin efficiencies, reposition human needed skills and abilities and attributes versus those that we can automate. So the job market, while there used to be 50 programmers that could get back into the job market in 3 to 9 months, if they didn't upskill or reskill, it isn't going to happen for them.
Yeah.
So that's my observation of the change. You were going to say something before I tell you how we solve that problem.
No, that was my next question. How do we solve that problem?
Yeah.
Well, you just get on the paperwork app. That's how you solve the problem.
Well,
There we
is the paperwork app designed for me, or is it designed for Coca-Cola, or both?
It's really designed for you, Megan, first.
Hmm.
Coca-Cola, we've had corporate centric models for 100 years, and look at where it got us. When we take a corporate centric view of how jobs work, the individual will always lose.
Right.
So you have to create a system that is focused on the individual, or else we're all going to lose. And we're continuing to lose. I mean, our taxes for unemployment have increased. The amount of income gap is just compounding. The amount of people that are underemployed is astronomical compared to the per capita of people that are eligible to work. I mean, we're in the problem. We're feeling the problem. We're feeling the problem from an economic perspective and emotional perspective. I mean, how many of you, and even when you think about the transition to entrepreneurship, you had to evaluate the way that the work was making you feel.
Right.
And if you're so disconnected from the work and the way that it makes you feel, you have no motivation to try to do something different, because you're like lost. Like, what do I do without that information? So yes, Megan, our system is designed assuming that John and Megan and Kim, we're the ones that are going to drive how the workforce is developed, not companies. Companies are going to always pivot. They're always going to consolidate. They're always going to find automation. They're always going to find ways to improve margin. That's business. That will never change. So it shouldn't come at the cost of people. And if we create this system where, you can get on an app and you can help clarify how your natural attitude, attributes, and abilities will actually apply to jobs in 2025, in 2027, in 2030, and have a workable, actionable plan to make that real. Now that's a game changer.
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit deeper into the specific app experience. And when we post this episode, we'll post a link as well so that people can get into the app directly. But help me understand, what is that experience with the app, and what is unique about the app that job seekers are going to discover, and what they might learn about themselves?
Well, cool. Actually, can you hear that background noise?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. The app experience starts off with you identifying 2 paths. You can start from a goal-centric path, or you can immediately get into building your talent profile and use our AI, which is, hey, I take a picture of your face and I predict your future, or a survey. And either way, either path that you choose, eventually you're going to come right around to the one or the other again. The reason why we promote, and every time somebody downloads our app or they find a message about us, we never say get a job, because the reality is you're not going to get a job immediately. There is no platform that is going to give you a job immediately. So we don't want to set the false narrative that PeopleWork is here as a job board or a way for you to start applying, like spam applying to everything. That's not at all what we're about. We're about setting realistic expectations so that you have less frustration, you don't question your value, and whether or not you have what's wrong with me complex from your resume over submission and gamifying. So when you're in the app, we start to ask you what's important to you. What are your working goals, your earning goals, your learning goals? And our system will start to recognize and ferret out a bunch of data related to jobs that are available 3, 6, 9, 2 years down the road. And we know that from working with our clients who on purpose plan ahead of time. We're remodeling jobs. This is like the biggest decade of remodeling jobs. Job descriptions are dead. They're discriminatory in nature. They eliminate
Intimidating.
people.
Can you tell me, Kim, has anybody ever actually qualified for a job description? Because I have not come across one that I'm like, who can do that? Who's right?
Well, the real question is, who knows?
Right.
Because you just got a bunch, you were spam applying to a huge narrative. You're like, sure, I'll give it a shot. If they call me, great. Like that's,
Right.
that's how it's worked. But then once you start to frame your goals, we start to ferret out this information around future available jobs. And then we ask you to make your talent profile. And only when those two components are complete can we start to say, well, hey, John, could be a job for you. Check this out. Does this job, not the company, does this job interest you? If it does, flag it as your goal job. And we're going to start to make a path, a series of activities to close the skills gap, get you connected to the industry, and actually get you connected to the people that can help you be ready for the interview, the conversation, the mentorship, the guidance that's required. Because the truth is, if you don't do all of those things, you're going to be applying through job boards and for like a year and a half before you get any results. So that's how we're different.
Well, and a lot of times I would say too, real quick, Megan, is you land a job because you're desperate that, number one, you don't like, you might not be very good at because you're not actually qualified, or it doesn't meet your direct skill set. You just can do it. And then you're probably most likely still hitting those job boards, or you're out of the job and now your resume looks even worse because you have another short-term role in that career arc, right? So you're not just helping people develop skills to find the right job goal, but when they get there, it's much more likely that they're going to be in that job for a longer period of time and thrive, is what it sounds.
Oh, yes. We actually, and people work for our corporations, we show exactly the fruit of our system right when they log in. The outcomes and delivery reporting, they're there. So no one can question whether or not we're more effective, more efficient, or actually help to increase all of the social objectives of a good talent acquisition program. I mean, we, even for our talent, when they say, great, we can reach out to anybody on chat and say, I've worked my model, I had 2 interviews, what's going on? Okay, well, let's figure out what's going on. Like you let's troubleshoot this. You have a recording of an interview. What's going on? Did you totally tank it? Do you get nervous in interviews? If you do, let's do some practice. We don't get paid for that level of additional support. I mean, for our premium members on our app, it's $120 a year for Cadillac level experience. Why? Because on our corporate side, we don't get paid until they hire a good candidate.
Right.
So we're 100% in it to win it with our entire community. This is not a superficial swipe right, swipe left kind of experience. We do swipe right, swipe left, but it's not superficial at all in nature. We really are out for changing the results of the system and the experience for people.
There's so much humanity, to this app that you've built. I am so impressed. It occurs to me, and I'm no expert, that there's nothing like this designed to match your talent and your passions to your job without seeing the name of the company. Is that right? So
Yeah.
there's not the candy. It's not like Nike. Well, yeah, I'll do that at Nike. I'll stamp envelopes at Nike.
Yes,
No,
exactly.
it's truly like helping people and presenting like this is a fit. Take a second to look at that. And that is what really intrigued me, was your innovation to see what we need, that we don't even know what we don't even know yet.
Yes. And I love, Megan, that you said, and actually it's one of the things that I was talking to we do some work with K through 12 colleges and universities. And I was speaking to a group and they said, oh, we're very concerned about making sure our next generation is ready for the future of work. And I said, okay, how many of you are teaching deep edge computing right now? Crickets.
What
I said,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's what they're like. Oh yeah, sure. No, you're not. And why are you not teaching that? Because you don't know what you don't know until you have data that informs you of it. And lagging, and we even for esports has so many transferable skills.
Yes.
What, just if you think at the gaming level, as somebody who was coding a game is actually a very good ethical hacker. The complexity of coding a game and the complexity of ethical hacking are equivalent in terms of mental capacity, and the ability to take just a core function. And this is why resumes will never work if we're really going to close the skills gap and keep people employed. If I know how to troubleshoot an actual coding of a game on my keyboard, the level of complexity and dexterity and mental acuity that is required is the same that's required of an ethical hacker. And right now, even on our platform, we have 7,342 ethical hacking jobs that are available.
Wow. I need to teach Johnny how to code some video games, it sounds like.
Well, and even some of the, I mean, you can just think about, there's so many different skills that have been developed in esports. And one of the most, but unrecognizable and really, in my opinion, that's talked about the least is the ingenuity. Yeah. Esports has been around for a decade plus, but in the iterations over time, there's a whole lot of stuff that had never been done before.
Right.
And explaining that as a skilled person in the esports industry, whether you're marketing or looking at relationships or trying to understand or explain to Microsoft why they need to be invested in esports, all of those are new conversations. They create change makers. They need change makers in order to work. And there's a plethora of talent in esports right now that can, because of what's happening and just a shift of jobs and people needing to find new opportunities for income, there's plenty of ways to do that. But you have to be able to do it in a way that those natural attitude, attributes, and abilities are going to be recognized. And you don't have to, play the resume game in order to do that.
Yeah. And I wonder if you want to share a little bit about why you decided to be our gold sponsor for our purposeful networking event that was created by our beloved Charles Conroy and John Davidson. Our flagship.
Set up for people what the networking is, and
yes.
Then Kim can speak into that. So for those listening, when you attend the EsportsNext conference, we really focus on networking. We focus around experiences around networking. But networking is going to be most valuable when you're meeting with people who are valuable to your business and vice versa. And so it is very common, especially at a highly attended event, that you may not meet the most valuable person in the room simply because you didn't know that they were there and you didn't get to understand what everybody does. So what we do is we kick off this conference with speed networking, where we give people 90 seconds to say, tell me what you do and what you need, and I'll tell you what I do and what I need. And then you switch and you go down, down, down. And so after 30, 45 minutes-ish, every single person, what they've done, they have not yet developed a relationship with the people in the room, but they have identified who they want to spend time with throughout the rest of the conference. And the sponsor of this purposeful speed networking is PeopleWork.
Well, actually, John, you just answered the question for me, because
Dang it.
you explained it's functional, it's meaningful, and it's about human connections.
That's right.
And that's PeopleWork.
That's
And
right.
why I specifically chose this event is because of the structure of the event. And we have been passive, and that's being generous, in participants in the esports industry. We have a few clients, we have a few roles that get kind of passed around. But back to that whole transferable skill conversation we had, there's a gold mine there. And I think that this event and the way that you're structuring it and the energy that you want to bring back and keep focused on the industry while these cycles of business just happen and the economy just happen, I think it's a great place for us to show up, because it matches where we want to be. We want to be in those conversations that are like, hey guys, we're in it together. And if we're in it together, let's find ways to make those genuine connections and make sure that we're not just out there to set up some fluff.
You're not. And you know what, Kim, what will surprise you, and John knows this because it happened to me yesterday. At least once a week I'm called, Meg, I lost my job.
Yeah.
For years and years. And you just wouldn't believe it. I'm almost the first call. And I think because A, I can't tell anybody. And B, people trust me. And then I kind of know like who's out there and what's going on. I feel like there's never been anything like this. And this is just the beginning of the technology. I can't wait to see what you're going to build out. And you have truly chosen the most soulful part of our conference, one of the most soulful parts. The awards is very special too, when we celebrate our members. And I mean, it's hard to choose, but I love this. I've never been to a conference in my entire life that does anything like this, designed by two of my favorite people. And I truly hope that this brand stays with you guys, because it's truly so special. And I also have another idea, Jen. I feel like after this show,
Here we go.
I know, here we go. After this show, I feel like we should do a podcast read for a commercial, because people need to try this app. This is cool. And we will help our community that gamers are just such special people. They actually believe they could do for a living what they love. A lot of them, if you want to generalize.
That is a great, what do you call that? It's either optimistic, you're optimistically delusional, or you're accurately optimistic. Like
you find out years down the road as you pursue it. And one thing that's so cool about esports too, you pursue this path as a pro gamer, and what is it, 0.3% of people make it, similar to traditional sports. But there are so many different jobs and career opportunities associated with esports, both beyond the scenes, all these different ways. We have hundreds and hundreds of people are members of the Esports Trade Association, and almost none of them make their money competing on the stage.
Right.
Almost all of them myself, Megan included, make a living in esports, from esports. And it's because we provide complementary skill sets and value around this thing that is based on people competing on a stage. One of the last questions I have for you here, Kim, for those listening, I want to make sure that everybody who is relevant to PeopleWork understands that PeopleWork is relevant to them. So can you just list off the different, I would say, people groups who should download the app and get involved, from both age and then I would say employment status as well.
Okay, well, we speak to it in 3 general groups. You're just launching your career, you're relaunching, or you're in transition. So the difference between relaunching and transition is I have been away from a formal paid position for a while, and now I need to figure out what I'm going to do with myself. Transitioning means I was in accounting and now I want to be a graphic designer. Those are two different categories. And when we say just launching, that obviously means you probably haven't had a job before and you kind of got to figure out what your career plan would be. Our demographics really reach from 16 all the way up to 38. That's where our core audience sits. The reason why we don't have too many users over 38 is unless you're in that transition, the transition bucket or relaunching, most of people are like, I kind of know what I am at 40 and a resume thing, it kind of works for me and I don't need to redesign anything. And in those cases, when you've not changed your career and you are what you are and you're going after the same thing, those are the cases when applicant tracking systems and resume-based experiences, they work because you've got, you've got over 2 decades to back you up. But in those scenarios that we nurture, the transition, the relaunching, and the just launching, you don't really know what you need to say or how to say it. And why would you waste time trying to figure it out?
Yeah.
Very well said. Well, to wrap this up, last question I would say is how, other than downloading the app, of course, which we want people to do, and we'll list a link for you in this episode, what are the other ways that people can get involved with you, your team, and directly with PeopleWork?
Well, of course, they can come see us in Chicago at the esports event. That's always
Right.
it. And they can visit us at peoplework.com, spelled phonetically, PEPELWERK. People always are like, why did you spell your name so weird? Well, one, it's hard to find the right domain name now. Everyone knows.
True story.
And 2, because I'm very literal about the vocabulary words. We are literally about people working. That's it. It doesn't get more complicated than that.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, Kim, thank you so much for joining us today. The work that you're doing is so impactful, and we can see that there's a trend here where it will only continue to deliver more and more value with people who are looking to start their careers and then transitioning to something new. On behalf of Megan, our lovely founder, and myself, thank you for joining us today on the EsportsNext podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.